The city was waking up beneath a soft pink dawn as Marcus Reed prepared for what would be the defining day of his career. The courthouse stood tall, a fortress of stone and steel amid the humming urban sprawl, a place where laws were made and broken, and where justice was supposed to be served blind, impartial, and fair. But Marcus knew better. Justice was never simple. It was messy, complicated, and most of all, human. Marcus adjusted the cuffs of his crisp white shirt as he reviewed the case file one last time. At 38 years old, he was no stranger to the harsh realities of the world. Raised in a working-class neighborhood on the city's south side, Marcus had seen the impact of prejudice and discrimination up close. The system that many trusted to protect them often felt stacked against people like him. Yet Marcus had refused to let bitterness consume him. Instead, he had dedicated himself to becoming a steady hand within that system, working as a court clerk for the past decade and recently promoted to assistant judge. He ran his fingers over the worn edges of the file. The defendant, Ethan Collins, was accused of armed robbery, a string of crimes that had rattled the community. But it wasn't just the severity of the charges that unsettled Marcus. Word had spread quickly about Ethan's words, spoken in private but loud enough to echo through the courthouse halls. He had openly disparaged Marcus, and worse, the black community Marcus belonged to, behind his back. The whispers of Ethan's hateful remarks had unsettled many in the courthouse staff, sparking uncomfortable conversations that lingered like a bad smell. Marcus's jaw tightened as he recalled the things he had heard: slurs, dismissive comments about black people being lazy or criminal, and personal attacks on Marcus's character and integrity. It was a toxic stew of racism wrapped in bravado. The worst part was knowing that the man he had to deal with in court didn't even try to hide it. Yet here Marcus was, tasked with upholding justice in a case that had become about much more than just a robbery. The city had eyes on this trial, the media, activists, community leaders, all waiting to see if justice would truly be blind or if racial bias would tip the scales. Marcus felt the weight of expectation settle on his shoulders like a physical force. Walking the halls of the courthouse, he caught snippets of conversations. "Collins doesn't deserve a break. Marcus better not go easy on him. This trial is about more than just crime, it's about respect." The voices blurred together, but the message was clear: this case was a powder keg. Despite the pressure, Marcus found solace in the small rituals he kept to steady his nerves. A deep breath. A glance out the window where early commuters hurried by. The faint hum of city life beyond these walls was a reminder that real people, with real struggles, were counting on him to be fair. As the morning light filtered through the tall courtroom windows, Marcus took his place at the bench. The room buzzed quietly, the tension palpable. Reporters scribbled notes. The defendant's family sat stiffly, their faces a mix of hope and dread. Ethan Collins entered like a storm, rough, confident, with a stare that dared anyone to challenge him. His reputation was as dirty as the grime under his fingernails. Years of bad choices had carved lines into his face, but it was the cold fire in his eyes that caught Marcus's attention. Ethan's lips curled into a sneer when his gaze locked with Marcus's. It was a look that said, "I don't respect you. I don't fear you." Marcus felt a familiar surge of anger but forced himself to remain composed. The law required it. Justice demanded it. But beneath that surface, a silent battle raged. The trial began with the prosecutor laying out the case, clear evidence, eyewitnesses, surveillance footage, all pointing to Ethan's guilt. The courtroom seemed ready to convict without question. But Marcus knew that what happened next would test more than just the facts. It would test the very principles he stood for. During breaks, Marcus overheard conversations among court staff, some openly expressing disdain for Ethan's racism, others cautioning Marcus to keep his emotions in check. He felt torn between two worlds, the cold, unforgiving letter of the law and the messy, painful reality of human prejudice. Back in the courtroom, Ethan's defense was a mix of defiance and denial, but his words outside the courtroom told a different story. Staff whispered about the hateful comments he had made, how he mocked Marcus's skin color and background without a hint of remorse. It was a constant reminder that beneath the surface of this trial lay a deeper battle, one about dignity, respect, and the hope for change. As the day wore on, Marcus found himself wrestling with a decision. The law was clear. Ethan's crimes deserved punishment. But so was his blatant racism, his disregard for others, his contempt. Could Marcus, a man who had fought so hard against injustice, now punish with cold cruelty? Or was there another path, one of mercy that might break a cycle of hate rather than deepen it? He remembered the words his mother used to tell him growing up. Kindness isn't weakness. It's strength that the world needs more of. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of the judge's gavel, calling the next witness. Marcus's heart beat steadily as he prepared himself. This trial was about to change everything. The courtroom was electric that morning, packed with reporters, locals, and activists. Cameras clicked and flashed, eager to capture every moment of the trial that had already become a headline in the city's newspapers. Marcus Reed sat at his assigned seat, feeling the weight of the moment press down on his shoulders like a physical force. This wasn't just any case. It was a test of everything he had stood for his entire life. The prosecution was methodical and relentless. Every piece of evidence was carefully laid out. The surveillance footage showing Ethan Collins' silhouette darting into the convenience store, the recovered stolen items found in his apartment, and eyewitnesses who identified him as the man who had threatened a store clerk with a gun. The narrative was clear, and most in the courtroom saw the outcome as inevitable. But Marcus knew better. The truth of the law was rarely straightforward, especially in a system riddled with biases and unseen prejudices. As the prosecutor concluded his opening statement, a hush fell over the room. All eyes shifted to Ethan Collins, sitting with a smug grin, crossing and uncrossing his legs as if he were already free. Ethan was a complex man, rough around the edges and with a history that painted him as the city's troublemaker. But what unsettled Marcus most was not just Ethan's past crimes. It was the venomous contempt he had shown for Marcus and the black community behind closed doors. The whispers about Ethan's racist remarks had traveled fast, how he had mocked Marcus's appearance, called him names, and openly disparaged black people as a whole. That knowledge gnawed at Marcus like a persistent itch. During a recess, Marcus walked the courthouse halls, trying to clear his mind. He passed by the water cooler, overhearing snippets of conversation from colleagues. "Did you hear what Collins said about Marcus?" "Unbelievable," one whispered. "It's disgusting. But Marcus has to stay professional. He can't let it get to him," another replied. Marcus's heart clenched. He knew they meant well, but their words reminded him how deeply entrenched racism still was, even here, in the supposedly neutral halls of justice. He thought of his mother, who had raised him to be strong in the face of adversity but always kind. "Strength is not just in fighting back, son. Sometimes it's in knowing when to forgive." When the trial resumed, the atmosphere shifted unexpectedly. Ethan's defense attorney attempted to portray him as a victim of circumstance, claiming the evidence was circumstantial and that Ethan's reputation had unfairly prejudiced the case. But it was what came next that stunned everyone. Ethan himself requested to address Marcus directly. The judge, surprised, granted permission, and the courtroom went silent. Marcus looked up, meeting Ethan's piercing gaze. The man's voice was rough but clear. "I know I've said some awful things," Ethan began, his tone unexpectedly sincere. "About you, about your people. I was angry, scared, maybe. But I'm not the man I pretended to be. Not all the time." The room shifted uneasily. Marcus's mind raced. Was this a ploy? A trick? Or a genuine moment of vulnerability? Ethan continued. "I'm asking you to see beyond the anger, beyond the past. What kind of man do you want to be, Marcus? The one who fights fire with fire? Or the one who breaks the cycle?" Marcus's chest tightened. The courtroom held its breath. He wanted to respond, to remind Ethan of the pain his words had caused, the barriers he had built. But instead, he remained silent, wrestling with the decision he had to make. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Witnesses came and went, each adding layers to the story. Some spoke of Ethan's troubled upbringing, the poverty and neglect that shaped him. Others testified to his moments of kindness, rare but genuine, that complicated the black and white narrative of villainy. Marcus found himself revisiting his own past, recalling moments when he had faced hatred and bigotry, times when a small act of mercy had made all the difference. As the trial neared its conclusion, the city's attention was laser-focused on the courtroom. Community leaders debated in the streets whether Marcus would deliver justice or mercy. Social media exploded with opinions, some demanding harsh punishment, others calling for compassion. Through it all, Marcus kept one thought front and center: justice is not revenge. Justice is balance. When the moment came to deliver his ruling, Marcus knew the world would be watching. But he also knew that his decision had to come from something deeper than public opinion or fear. It had to come from the strength of kindness. His hands trembled slightly as he rose to address the court, feeling the full weight of history and hope in the room. The verdict would not only decide Ethan Collins' fate but send a message to a city desperate for change. The courtroom was filled with a heavy silence that seemed to press down on everyone present. Marcus Reed stood up slowly, the eyes of the judge, jury, press, and spectators all fixed on him. He felt the crushing weight of responsibility. This moment was not just about delivering a verdict. It was about justice, mercy, and the future of two men who had crossed paths under the harshest of circumstances. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest as he cleared his throat. The words he was about to say would ripple far beyond these walls. He looked out into the crowd, catching sight of Ethan Collins' face, a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. After carefully reviewing all the evidence and hearing the testimonies presented during this trial, Marcus began, his voice steady but solemn. I hereby find Ethan Collins guilty of the charges brought against him. The gavel had not yet struck, but the murmur in the courtroom was immediate, a mixture of relief, shock, and anticipation. Justice, it seemed, had found its mark. But Marcus wasn't finished. He paused, letting the moment settle before continuing. However, the role of this court is not simply to punish, but to administer justice fairly and with compassion. I must consider not only the nature of the crime but also the individual before me, his circumstances, character, and the potential for redemption. A low murmur of disbelief rose among the spectators. The prosecutor's lips tightened into a thin line, some in the audience whispered heated words. Marcus took a breath. Therefore, in sentencing Mr. Collins, I order 5 years of probation, mandatory participation in a rehabilitation and community service program, and ongoing evaluation by social services. Shock washed through the room. Some gasped, others shook their heads in disbelief. Ethan himself looked stunned, then slowly allowed a faint smile to spread across his face. He glanced at Marcus, eyes reflecting a complicated mix of gratitude and disbelief. Judge Sanders banged the gavel sharply. Order! Order in the court! The sentence is recorded. Court is adjourned. Marcus sat down, a mix of emotions flooding through him. Relief, that he had stayed true to his beliefs. Anxiety, wondering how the city would respond to this controversial decision. And an unexpected sense of hope, that mercy might break the vicious cycle of hatred and punishment. Outside the courthouse, reactions erupted like wildfire. Social media exploded with divided opinions, some branding Marcus as too lenient, others praising his courage and empathy. Community leaders gathered, debating fiercely whether Marcus's decision was a bold step forward or a dangerous precedent. Back at his office, Marcus sat alone late into the night, replaying the trial in his mind. He thought about Ethan's words during the courtroom, the unexpected admission of regret, the plea for understanding. Was it naive to believe in change? Or was justice truly about giving second chances? In the following weeks, Marcus kept a watchful eye on Ethan's progress. The man attended his community service and rehabilitation sessions diligently, often showing up early and staying late. Slowly but surely, the hardened exterior softened. One afternoon, while Marcus was reviewing case files, his phone rang. It was Ethan. Marcus. Ethan's voice was quieter than Marcus had ever heard. I just wanted to say thanks. For believing I could change. Marcus smiled softly. We all deserve a chance, Ethan. It's up to us what we do with it. Their relationship, once adversarial, began to shift in unexpected ways. They met outside the courtroom, sharing stories about their lives, Marcus about his upbringing in a tough neighborhood, and Ethan about the poverty and neglect that had shaped him. Despite their differences, a tentative respect blossomed. But change is never easy. One evening, Marcus received a frantic call. Ethan had been attacked near a dangerous part of town, apparently targeted by old enemies. Without hesitation, Marcus rushed to the hospital. Finding Ethan bruised but alive, Marcus sat by his bedside, the silence between them filled with unspoken emotions. In that quiet hospital room, Marcus understood that this was more than just about a court case. It was about two men choosing to break the cycle of hate and find humanity in each other. The city watched, riveted by their story, a powerful testament to the complicated, messy, but ultimately hopeful path toward justice, mercy, and reconciliation. The days after Ethan's hospitalization were a whirlwind of emotions for Marcus. He found himself caught in a strange limbo, part judge, part friend, and all human. His decision to show mercy had sparked a firestorm in the community, and yet here he was, standing beside a man many still saw as a criminal. Marcus sat alone in his office late one evening, the city's distant hum filtering through the window. His mind replayed the recent events, Ethan's unexpected attack, the shock on his face when Marcus visited, and the quiet words exchanged between hospital rooms. He ran a hand over his tired eyes, thinking about the risks he'd taken by going against the tide of public opinion. Was this what justice really meant? Not just punishment, but the chance for someone to rewrite their story? Meanwhile, Ethan struggled with his own demons. The attack was a brutal reminder of the world he came from, a place of violence and mistrust, where a single misstep could cost everything. But now, something inside him had shifted. For the first time in years, he dared to hope. During his rehabilitation sessions, Ethan confronted painful memories of a childhood shadowed by neglect, of bitter resentment towards society, and of his own misguided choices. Yet, through these moments of vulnerability, a new resolve took root. One afternoon, Marcus and Ethan met at a community center where Ethan was volunteering. The room buzzed with activity, children laughing, neighbors exchanging stories, a faint smell of coffee and hope lingering in the air. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he greeted Marcus. "I never thought I'd be here like this," he admitted, nodding towards the bustling hall. "Helping others instead of fighting against the world." Marcus smiled warmly. "Sometimes the hardest battles are fought within ourselves." Their conversations grew deeper over time. Marcus learned about Ethan's dreams, once crushed by circumstances, now slowly rekindling. And Ethan discovered a side of Marcus few saw, a man burdened by the weight of his decisions but driven by an unshakable belief in humanity's capacity to change. Yet, the outside world wasn't as forgiving. News outlets continued to question Marcus's judgment. Local politicians used the case to stoke divisions, and some community members expressed outright hostility. Marcus's phone was flooded with angry calls and messages. One evening, Marcus attended a neighborhood meeting. Voices were raised, accusations hurled. A woman stood up, her eyes fiery. "How can you let a man like Ethan walk free?" she demanded. "What message does that send to our children?" Marcus took a deep breath, meeting her gaze. "Justice is not just about punishment," he said firmly. "It's about building a society where people can learn from their mistakes and become better." The room remained tense, but some faces softened. Change, Marcus realized, was a slow and painful process. Back in the quiet moments, Marcus wrestled with his own fears. Was he doing the right thing? Was his mercy a strength, or a weakness? Then came the turning point. One morning, Marcus received a letter, not from a politician, nor from a reporter, but from a young boy named Jamal, who lived in one of the city's toughest neighborhoods. "Dear Judge Reed," the letter read, "I heard about Ethan Collins. I want to say thank you. Because of your kindness, I believe I can be better too. I want to finish school and help my family. You gave me hope. Marcus read the letter twice, his eyes moist. This was why he had made the choice, for the boys and girls like Jamal, who deserved a future free from hatred. As the weeks passed, Marcus and Ethan continued their unlikely journey, one marked by challenges, setbacks, but also small victories. Together, they began working on a community initiative to support at-risk youth, turning their story into a beacon of hope. Marcus realized that justice wasn't a simple concept, it was messy, imperfect, but deeply human. And sometimes, mercy was the most powerful form of justice. The early morning air was crisp and biting as Marcus stepped out of his modest apartment in downtown Cleveland. The city was waking slowly, its streets still cloaked in a thin layer of mist, and the distant sounds of traffic began to hum in the background. Marcus pulled his coat tighter around him, feeling the weight of the past months pressing down like a heavy fog. Every decision he had made recently, especially the controversial one to spare Ethan Collins from a harsh sentence, seemed to echo louder with each passing day. Marcus's role as a judge had always been about the law, the black and white lines of justice etched in statutes and precedents. But now, he was learning that justice was rarely so simple. It was messy, complicated, and deeply human. When he first met Ethan Collins, a man with a criminal past and a present filled with uncertainty, Marcus had seen something that others hadn't, a flicker of hope, a chance for redemption. Ethan's rehabilitation wasn't easy. The path ahead was littered with obstacles, his own doubts, the skepticism of the community, and the lingering shadows of his past. He battled not only his inner demons but also the harsh judgments of those unwilling to forgive. At times, Marcus feared Ethan might stumble and fall, dragged down by the weight of old prejudices and new fears. Despite this, Ethan persevered. One day, he approached Marcus with an idea, a community cleanup project aimed at reclaiming a neglected neighborhood park, a place where children once played but had long since been abandoned to trash and decay. "This isn't just about cleaning up the park," Ethan said, his eyes earnest. "It's about showing that we can change, that we're not defined by our mistakes." Marcus agreed to support the initiative, attending the kickoff event alongside local volunteers. The park buzzed with energy. Teenagers picking up litter, elderly neighbors sharing stories, children laughing as they planted flowers. The air was thick with the scent of fresh earth and the possibility of new beginnings. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light over the transformed space, Marcus found himself speaking with Mia, a young girl from the neighborhood. "Thank you for giving Mr. Collins a chance," she said quietly, her voice full of genuine gratitude. "Because of him, my little brother feels safe playing outside again." Marcus's heart tightened. These moments of quiet impact were what truly mattered, far beyond the confines of the courtroom. Yet, outside this bubble of hope, resistance simmered. Marcus received anonymous letters filled with hate and threats, a stark reminder of the deep divisions still etched into society. Instead of silencing him, these messages strengthened his resolve to push for broader restorative justice reforms. At the same time, Ethan faced his own battles. Some in his old neighborhood viewed his transformation with suspicion or outright hostility. But Ethan refused to let the past dictate his future. With Marcus's guidance, he began mentoring troubled youth, sharing his story as a beacon of hope and a cautionary tale. One evening, at a community gathering filled with people from all walks of life, Ethan spoke with heartfelt conviction. "I was given a chance I didn't deserve," he admitted, voice steady but emotional. "And I'm here to tell you that change is possible, if you're willing to fight for it." The crowd responded with thunderous applause, a moment of collective recognition that justice and mercy could, and should, coexist. Marcus watched from the sidelines, pride swelling within him. The journey was far from over, but the seeds of change had been planted deep. Later that night, Marcus sat at his desk, staring at a photograph hanging on the wall, Ethan surrounded by children, smiling in the park they had reclaimed together. The image was a testament to the power of mercy and second chances. Inspired, Marcus began drafting a proposal for a city-wide restorative justice program. He envisioned a future where mercy wasn't an exception but a guiding principle, a justice system that healed rather than punished. As dawn broke over the city, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in a long while, hope felt tangible, a light guiding the way forward. Several months had passed since the community cleanup project, and the atmosphere in Cleveland was subtly shifting. Word of Ethan Collins's transformation spread beyond the neighborhood, stirring conversations about justice, redemption, and the power of compassion. For Marcus, this was more than just a ripple, it was the beginning of a tide. One afternoon, Marcus sat in his chambers reviewing case files when his phone buzzed with an unexpected message. It was from Ethan. "Judge Marcus, I need to talk. It's urgent. Can we meet?" Curious and somewhat concerned, Marcus quickly agreed. They arranged to meet at a quiet cafe near the courthouse. When Marcus arrived, Ethan was already there, his face serious but composed. "Thanks for meeting me," Ethan began, sliding into the seat across from Marcus. "I've been working on something that could really help the community. But I need your help." Marcus leaned in, intrigued. Ethan explained his plan to start a mentorship program for at-risk youth, focusing on education, job training, and emotional support. It was ambitious, but Marcus recognized its potential. "I want to give others the chance I was given," Ethan said firmly. "Not just talk about change, but live it." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'm with you. Let's make it happen." Together, they began reaching out to local organizations, seeking funding and support. It wasn't easy. Bureaucracy, skepticism, and limited resources threatened to stall their efforts. But each obstacle only strengthened their resolve. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his work pushing for restorative justice policies, facing pushback from colleagues who saw his approach as naive or risky. Yet, every time doubt crept in, he reminded himself of Ethan's journey, a testament to what mercy could achieve. One evening, Marcus received a call from a police officer, the same one who had once brought Ethan's case to court. The officer needed help with a young man arrested for a petty theft, a repeat offender with a troubled background. Marcus saw an opportunity to apply his principles on a broader scale. He worked with the officer and social workers to offer the young man counseling and community service instead of jail time. It was a gamble, but one that paid off. The youth gradually turned his life around. Word of these successes sparked interest from the city council. Marcus was invited to speak at a public forum, where he passionately advocated for justice that heals. During the forum, a woman approached Marcus afterward, a community leader named Angela, who had lost her brother to violence years ago. "I was skeptical," she admitted. "But seeing what you and Ethan are doing, I believe in second chances now." Her words touched Marcus deeply. This was the change he had hoped for, not just in courts but in hearts. One afternoon, as Marcus walked through the park Ethan had helped restore, he noticed a group of teenagers gathered around, listening intently as Ethan shared his story. Marcus smiled quietly to himself. The journey that had started with a single act of mercy was blossoming into a movement. As the sun set behind the city skyline, Marcus reflected on the twists and turns of fate, how a moment of compassion had changed his life and the lives of many others. He understood now that justice was not just about punishment, but about forgiveness, growth, and hope. And in that understanding he found peace.